Charlie Young, MBE, congratulations, and thank you for giving this interview to Wycombe High TV. How do you feel about receiving your MBE? It must feel amazing.
Thank you so much. Yes, it really does. I feel incredibly excited, quite humbled because it feels like a really big recognition. But I also feel excited that it can be a role model and an example to the girls that we work with as well, to say actually this is possible, and if you work hard, you can achieve brilliant things and be recognized for that. Yeah, exciting time, and thank you so much for having me.
What memories do you have of being a student here at Wycombe High?
So many memories, really happy memories. I think the things that stick out most, taking part in concerts and musicals. So I did lots of that, which was brilliant fun and a really nice way to get to know people in different forms and different year groups. I took part in Young Enterprise when I was at Wycombe High as well, which was great fun. And we also set up a breakfast bar in the Shack. I don't know if that still exists. There's a little tuck shop outside the canteen called the Shack where you could buy breaks, and we took over for a couple of weeks in the morning, and we sold croissants and orange juice and coffee to raise money for a charity to fund water in African countries. It might have been Tear Fund, but I can't remember who it was exactly, but that was great fun as well. So lots of really nice community focused things I remember from being at school.
That shack thing sounds really cool.
Yeah, it does.
How did you arrive at where you are today?
Gosh, well, having studied philosophy and ethics at A-level at Wycombe High, I then went and studied philosophy at King's College London, which I absolutely loved, found it a really great degree. And then I left that and wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. I realised that probably nobody was going to pay me to sit around and think clever things. And I realised that I was really interested in education. So my mum and my dad had both been teachers. And so I ended up working for an organisation called the Royal Society of Arts. And I worked with lots of different schools talking about how can you make education really engaging for young people and make it really relevant to the world that they're going into. And that was brilliant. I spent a lot of time talking to teachers and head teachers and saying, oh, look, this works really well. Maybe you want to try this. And then I thought, that's quite, I think what I'm saying is great, but it's actually quite a big thing for me, who's never been a teacher, to be telling all these teachers how to do their job. So I decided to train as a teacher myself. And I joined an organisation called Teach First, which takes graduates from lots of different backgrounds and places them into some of the most disadvantaged schools in the country, where you learn to teach on the job, which was absolutely terrifying, really hard work, but one of the best things I've done. And I got to spend lots of time with brilliant young people. So I did that for a couple of years. And then after a couple of years, I recognised that there was a need and ended up setting up the Girls Network, which is what I do now.
What gave you the idea for the Girls Network?
Well, I was teaching, as I said, in a fairly disadvantaged secondary school. And so really it was the young people and particularly the girls that I met there that gave me the idea. By virtue of the fact that they were girls, and this might be stuff that you recognise as well, they and other people had expectations about how they should behave, how they should look, the kinds of things they should aspire to. So for a lot of them, they felt a real pressure to be pretty and neat and tidy and really polite and to always get things right. And so for the girls in my classroom in particular, there was a problem where they didn't want to take risks because there was too big a risk of failure and they didn't want to fail. So they wouldn't take risks in the first place. And that meant that they often wouldn't take the opportunities that were presented to them because it was too scary a thing to do. And that combined with the fact that for many of them, they were coming from families where the adults and parents were really supportive, but often they didn't work, or if they did, they were doing jobs to bring in money rather than perhaps pursuing something they really loved and really cared about. And the women in those communities were often doing lower status, lower paid jobs. So at the Girls Network, we talk about the 5 C's: cleaning, catering, clerking, caring and cashiering, which are obviously all really important jobs. I mean, if we think about this year, we see how important particularly caring has been in the world, right? But they generally get less money for what they do. Often they don't have such a high status, which doesn't matter. But if that's not what you want to do, and that's all that you see people like you around you doing, that can be quite limiting. And so for some of the girls in my classroom who wanted to be engineers and authors and criminal psychologists, they saw nobody like them doing it. And so they thought, well, I don't get to do that. Even though I want to do it, someone like me doesn't get to do that. And so as their teacher, seeing how brilliant they were, that was really heartbreaking, because I thought that's not fair. Just because of who you are and where you come from shouldn't mean you don't get to do the things you aspire to. So originally, we just brought in women that I knew from university, from different jobs, and we brought them into the classroom, and we had a couple of hours speed networking. So they were talking to lots of different women doing different jobs, and that had a huge impact on them, because they were talking to women that they could relate to, and they started to see that there was a route between where they were and where the women were. And there was just that sense of possibility, and that really changed the way they thought about themselves and their futures. And so I just thought, if you can do that in 2 hours, how much more could you do if we got those women to get to know those girls and built a relationship over a year? And so that's where the Girls Network mentoring charity came from, really.
The work you're doing sounds amazing. Could you tell us a bit more about how the charity works?
Of course. So we work with 14 to 19-year-old girls from the least advantaged communities around the country. And then we match them one-to-one with professional women from lots of different backgrounds and careers. And then they work together over the course of the year. And so in those mentoring sessions, they look at developing skills for work or for life, building their confidence. But we also try and make sure they have access to lots of different opportunities and support them to take those. So be it internships or work experience. And then we try and build the network as well. So actually connecting them to people that maybe they otherwise wouldn't have had access to otherwise. So if they want to be a doctor, we can connect them to somebody who is a doctor, and they can learn more about what it takes and how to get there. And so at the moment, we work with 1,400 girls each year across the country. So in London, in the South Coast, in the Midlands, in the Northwest, and up in the Northeast.
The ethos of the Girls Network and empowering young women appears to be very similar to the ethos of Wycombe High School. Do you think your time here influenced you in the work you do?
Yes, I think definitely my time at Wycombe High influenced me and the way we work. I think being in an environment where girls and young women are supporting each other and encouraging each other was really formative for me in recognizing how powerful that can be. And I think also recognizing that believing in what you're doing, putting in hard work, focusing on that can lead you to amazing places and lead you to realizing your ambitions and your dreams. So I think that really did shape my thinking. But also that it helps to have connections. It helps to have people that can point you in the right direction, that have done it before, can give you advice, and from whose experience you could learn. And I think Wycombe High was great in having that community of girls and women and really supportive teachers.
What do you think are some of the biggest challenges facing young women today, especially in terms of empowerment?
Yes, that's a really important question, I think. And I think this last year has probably highlighted some of those more. I think there were challenges already facing young people, and particularly young women. Mental health, we know, has been a really big issue. And I think certainly for a lot of the girls that we work with, that's come out. It's been really difficult in a world that's felt really uncertain and unknown to feel hopeful for the future and to feel like you know where you're going. That said, I think certainly the girls and young women we work with and other young people I've spoken to have been remarkably resilient and creative and enterprising in facing such challenges. So I think, you've got the flip side of that, but mental health, I think, has been a real issue. But I also think role models still is a problem. I think when we look out into the world, there are certain areas where we don't see women represented, and certainly not a diverse set of women. So I think that can be a real challenge in imagining your future and feeling like you're capable, and also feeling like your voice is going to be heard. I think when in positions of power, particularly in politics, we have a lot of men making the decisions and calling the shots. I think as a young girl, it can sometimes feel like, well, what does my opinion matter? What does my voice matter? And so I think it's really important for us to keep repeating the message that actually you can do this, your voice does matter, and you can shape the future. And I think that plays a really important role in making sure that we have brilliant girls and young women shaping our world, because that's what's going to make it better, I think.
What projects have you and your charity got in the pipeline?
So probably the thing I'm most excited about, as well as of course growing across the country and trying to reach more girls and young women, is our reverse girl-led mentoring. So this builds a bit on that point about girls' voices being heard. And we are working with some of our older girls that have been through the programme to mentor women, senior women in lots of different organisations. The idea is that their voices and their experiences can help to shape these organisations, to shape systems and make them better and make them more diverse and make them more equitable. So at the moment we are piloting with the Metropolitan Police, and we have 3 of our girls mentoring 3 of the most senior women in the Metropolitan Police Force, talking about their experiences, talking about their impressions of the police force, and working with those women to help make the force more accessible and more equal, and thinking about issues that matter to the girls, be that stop and search or gang crime or knife crime. So that I'm really excited about. And I think we can do some amazing work having girls and women placed in lots of different positions of power, talking to people that hold those levers of power and thinking about how can we make the world better, how can we make organisations and systems better, but really driven by girls and young women. I think that's really exciting.
That sounds really cool. I love how young women are getting a voice. Charlie Young, MBE, congratulations again, and thank you for joining us here on Wycombe High TV.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It's been lovely.